Hello all, welcome to operating system course. So in the last class we had studied till the hardware support in paging, right? The TLB and all. So today we will see the structure of the page table, or we can say the types of page table. Okay, so there are three types of page table. The first one is hierarchical paging, second one is hashed page table, and the third one is inverted page tables. So first let's talk about hierarchical paging. Okay, so modern computers those support large logical address space, say suppose 2 raised to 32 or 2 raised to 64, right? In between them. So that means your page table it becomes too large. It may contain lakhs of entries. So the solution here is to divide the page table into smaller pieces. Okay. So in the hierarchical paging, in the as the name suggests, it is a hierarchy of the page tables. We may have like two or more page tables instead of one. Okay, so in the hierarchical paging what will happen is whenever a page table has entries in the lakhs, okay, then we use these types of paging. So say suppose you have a system that has 32-bit logical address space. Okay, let me write here. So we have a system with 32-bit logical address space, and say suppose your page size is 4 KB. Fine. Now this 4 KB, that means how can we write 4? 2 raised to 2, right? So now this 2 raised to 2, it can be also written as something like this. 2 raised to 2 into 2 raised to 1, or basically 10, right? So that gives you 2 raised to 12. So here 1 KB, we all know the value of 1 KB, that is 1024 bits. So 2 raised to 10, that means 2 raised to 10. Fine. Now 2 raised to 12, that means a page may contain around 2 raised to 12 locations. So basically what will happen is here your logical address whenever it has been generated by your CPU, it would be divided into two parts, right? One is your page number and other one is the offset. So here the offset, in our case in this example, offset it becomes the value of D, it becomes 12. Okay, this one. Now, so we had seen that we have assumed the system is of 32-bit, right? Now 32 minus 12, that means we will get P or the page number as 20. That means the size of each page, it would be 20 bits. Okay, we can store around 2 raised to 20 page numbers in the page table, which is too huge. So what we do, instead of keeping all these entries into one table, we divide the page table into multiple page tables. Why? Because the page table will be there in the main memory, right? And we cannot consume that much memory space of your that much memory space. So and when you try to access an entry, there will be more delay. Why? Because you will be having lakhs of entries, right? So here in the hierarchical paging, what will happen is, let me first take this example, okay, this diagram. So suppose we had assumed it is of system is of 32 bits, right? So I'll talk about the same thing. So in our case we had known, or in the previous slide we had decided, or we had seen, right, the displacement would be 12, and page size of, or basically what we can say is like 2 raised to 20 page numbers can be stored in your page table. That means P would be 20. Now if suppose, say, as we all know, we have to divide the page table into multiple page tables, right? If suppose we divide into 2, that means say suppose we have 2 page tables, then this P can be divided into two parts, that is P1 and P2, which is of 10 each. Okay, 10 bits each. So that means your displacement would be of 12 bits, P1 would be 10, and P2, this will also be 10. This is nothing but your CPU which has generated this logical address. Now that is divided into three parts. Basically we would divide it into two parts, right? Page number and displacement. Here as we are using two page tables, so we have two P's there, P1 and P2, which is of 10 bits each, right? Now what will happen is your P1, you can see from this diagram, right? So it will be an index to your outermost page table. So this is your outermost page table, and this is your page of this page table, or also this can also be called as inner page table. Okay, so the outermost we call it as the outer page table, and whatever the page number which has been generated by this p1, it is given as an index to the outermost page table. Now this outermost page table, it takes this input and it produces some offset as an output. Okay, just remember these all things. Now I'll take one more example so you'll be clear. Okay, so p1, whatever it has generated the page number, it is given as input to the outermost page table. This outermost page table, it generates some offset, and now this offset is given as an input to the inner page table, that is p2. Okay, now this p2, it takes this offset as an input and it searches for the corresponding frame number. Okay, so your inner page table, it contains the frame number as the content. So your p2, whenever it gets searched, corresponding frame number will be taken, and this frame number would be added with your displacement. And whenever you add your frame number with the displacement, what you get, you actually get the physical address or the main memory address, right? So this is two level paging. So let me just go back to the previous slide. So whatever you can see here, right? So this is your outermost page table like the P1, and this is the inner page table or page of page table which is P2. So here we have two tables. Okay, this first one, here it will take the address as an input and it generates some offset. This offset is nothing but some location in the inner page table. Okay. Now whenever this inner page table has been searched and say suppose it produces some frame number, that particular frame number is added with the displacement, and that value, whatever you get, is your actual physical address or the main memory address, right? So this is an example for two level page table scheme. So you may have three level page table, four level page table, something like this. So if suppose if you have say if you have this three level paging, then what will happen? So you can see, right? So it will be having four things here, that is p1, p2, p3, and say this is your displacement. So for the two level paging, what will happen? You will have two pages. That means you will have first table, second page table, and then the displacement. So in this case, what will happen? This p1 is given as an input to the outermost page table. It produces an offset that would be given as an input to p2, the inner page table. Okay, now p2 produces another offset which can be given as an input to the innermost page table, which is p3. Now p3, it generates some frame number, and that frame number is added with the displacement. Whatever value you get, that is your actual physical address. Fine. So this is about your hierarchical paging. Fine. The next one is the hashed page tables. So again, this hashed page table, it is used to store large entries of your page table. Basically, wherever you have the logical address space greater than 32 bits. So in the hashed page table, what will happen is the CPU, it produces this logical address. Okay. Now this logical address is divided into two parts, as we all know. This is page number and this is displacement or the offset. Now what will happen is in the hashed page table, you give this page number as an input to the hash function. Okay, this hash function is nothing but your basic mathematical functions. It may be like multiplication, division, modulo, something like this. Okay, so CPU, it produces this logical address. This logical address will be divided into two parts. One is your page number and the other one is the offset. This page number is given as an input to the hash function, like the examples I have given for the hash function. So once the hash function is applied on the page number, it produces a value or a hash value, we say that. Okay, which value or the hash value, whatever we get when the hash function is applied on the page number, right? So that particular value, hash value, is given as an input to your hash table. Or basically, whenever hash function is applied on your page number, whatever value you get, it is searched in your hash table. Fine. Now each entry in the hash table, it contains a linked list. You can see this is a linked list, right? So basically I'll write here a linked list, it contains nodes, right? So in our case, a node contains three fields. The first one, whatever q here you can see here, right? It is nothing but your page number, right? The next s, whatever you can see here, it is nothing but your frame number. And the last thing here you can see the arrow mark, right? This one, right? This is nothing but pointer to the next node, basically pointer to the next node or address of the next node. Okay, so each entry in the hash table, it would be a linked list. It would contain a linked list, which is linked list is nothing but collection of items, right? Or the elements. So each node in the linked list will have three fields. First the page number, then the frame number, then you have the pointer or the address of the next node. Say suppose the first address is 100, this node's address is 100 and this is 200, then this space would have, or this address would be 200. If suppose here again say we suppose we have another node here and say address is 300, then here 300 would be there. If suppose there is no more nodes here, then last what will happen, it would be kept as null. Fine. So what or how the search will happen here is, whenever you get a hash value, so it would contain that particular linked list, right? Whenever you are searching this linked list, if you get the page number in the node in any of the nodes, then what you do, you take or extract the corresponding frame number, the middle one, right? You extract that. Now what you do, you can add that particular frame number with the displacement here, right? So that produces or gives you the physical address. So this is about hashed page tables. Next we will talk about inverted page tables. So as we all know, each process will have its own page table. Like say suppose you have process P1, fine. Say suppose it has 100 pages. Okay, it has 100 pages. That means P1 will have its own page table with 100 pages, right? Suppose if P2 you have a process, suppose it is having 1000 pages, that means P2 again will have its own page table which will have 1000 records or the entries. Fine. So if suppose we have process P1 which has 100 pages, and assume that in the main memory we have only 10 free frames. Okay, so suppose like this, P1 we have 100 pages, right? And say this is the page table of P1 page table. Okay, so 0 1, like 100 pages or the 100 entries would be there in your page table. Fine. Now say suppose we have 0th page in frame 5 and say suppose any 89th page in frame 6, something like this. Now say suppose our main memory, this is our main memory, say suppose it has only 10 free frames. Okay, so okay, that means only out of 100 pages which process P1 is having, only 10 pages would be there in your main memory. Why? Because your main memory has only 10 free frames. Okay, now what will happen is, even if there are 10 free frames and that are allocated to the 10 pages of process P1, but your page table, it should contain 100 entries. That means say suppose 0th page is present in 5th frame in the main memory. Say suppose first frame it is not been allocated in the main memory. Then say suppose 100 page is not allocated in the main memory. 89th page is present at the 6th frame in the main memory, likewise. But even in this case, we have to understand here page table will contain 100 entries. Okay, wherever in the page table, for suppose any page like 100, if there is no particular or frame number which has been associated in the main memory, that would be marked as invalid. Okay, so basically for page table protection, what will happen is, apart from your free frame, sorry, apart from your frame number, let me write here. Okay, say suppose this is your page table. It will have the frame numbers one side, another side it will be having valid and invalid bit. Okay, that is one bit that is called as valid or invalid. Wherever, okay, say suppose this is page 0, page 1 and page 2. So now page 1 and page 2, you have the frame numbers and it is marked as valid here, right? That means these two pages, or this page 1 and page 2, are actually present in your main memory. Now page 0, you have a frame number but it is marked as invalid here, I. That means your page 0, this page is not present in the main memory. Okay, so this is how your page table would be there. This comes under the protection of the page table. Now here what will happen is, in our example where process P1 was having 100 pages, say out of 100 pages only 10 pages have been present in the main memory. Now your page table, in the page table what will happen is, even though only 10 pages are there in the main memory, all the 100 entries would be there in our page table. So wherever the page is not allocated to the main memory, it would be marked as invalid. Okay. Now that means we are not properly using our page table space. Why? Because our page table, it contains all the pages information, even though if some of these pages are not actually present in the main memory, right? So if pages are not present in the main memory, then why to simply store that in the page table is the question, right? So to overcome this problem, we use inverted page table. So in the inverted page table, okay, basically what will happen is, for each process we will have each one page table, right? So but here in the inverted page table what will happen is, that means in the system only one page table would be there. For all the processes only one page table would be there. Okay, so in the inverted page table the information about only those pages of the processes which are there in the main memory is stored. I'll give you an example. Say suppose you have this process P1 which is of 100 pages, and say process P2 which is of 1000 pages. Fine. Now say for example out of 100 only 25 pages are there in main memory. Okay. And out of this 1000 pages of P2, only 100 pages are there in the main memory. So in the inverted page table what will happen? In the entire system you will have only one inverted page table. Fine. Now in this inverted page table what will be the condition is, so the 25 pages of the process P1 and 100 pages of the process P2, the entries for these two things will be there. Like in the inverted page table you will have 125 records. But if there was a normal page table, then what would happen? Then even though out of 100, 25 pages were there in the main memory, all the 100 would have been there in the page table. Along with that, what will happen? Out of 1000 you were having 100 pages in the main memory, right? But if that was the normal page table, then again 1000 entries would be there. That means a single page table would have 1100 entries, which is of no use. Why? Because out of this 1100 of these two processes only 125 are allocated in the main memory, right? So that is the problem. That's why I had said that space of the page table was not used properly. Okay, so to overcome this problem, we have this inverted page table. Fine. In the inverted page table, what will happen? Only the information about only those pages of particular processes which are there in the main memory, only those things, those entries would be kept in your inverted page table. Okay, now let us consider this diagram here, that is for inverted page table. So what happens is, here whenever the CPU it generates the logical address, basically the logical address would be divided into page number P and D, right? That is displacement. But in this case, inverted page table, along with your page number and the displacement or the offset, you will also have one more field called as PID, that is process identification number. Okay, like basically your process P1 or P2, some unique ID for that particular process. Okay. Now, whenever CPU generates logical address, it is divided into three parts: process ID, page number, and the displacement. This is your inverted page table. Okay. First, what will happen here is, along with your process ID, the page number will be given as an input to your inverted page table, and for the then your page table, inverted page table, would be searched for that particular process ID and then the page number. If you find out in the whenever you are searching the inverted page table, if you found out that particular process ID's page, that entry in the page table, then you will get the frame number there as well. This is I is nothing but your frame number. Okay, so once you get the frame number, you add that frame number with the displacement or the offset. So once you add that frame number with this displacement, what you get is your physical address or the actual address of that particular instruction in the main memory. Okay. If suppose whenever you are searching this inverted page table, say suppose you did not get the match for this process ID and the page number, then it would be an invalid access. That means you are trying to access a invalid page which is not there in the main memory. Fine. So this is about your inverted page tables. So in the types of or the structure of page table, we have seen three types: hierarchical paging. Hierarchical paging is also called as multi-level paging. You can have two paging, three paging, like that. Then we have seen hashed page tables. The last one we have seen about inverted page tables. Okay, that's it for today. We'll conclude our session. Thank you.